Good morning, everybody out there in the internet. We're getting started. My name is George Kennard, and I'm doing the live stream this morning. And I have G. Brian Jook, Chris Rochelle, and Catherine Ayers helping out. Amanda Sterling is going to be the moderator. So if you guys have any questions, if there's anybody out there listening, you can type in any questions you want to know, and we'll try to answer them. So I'm going to try to keep the mic on as long as I can. And we're going to make a big round incalmo bottle today, and we have an example in the front. Go ahead, G. So we made one yesterday as a practice to make sure we could fit it in the time frame, and we were pretty close. So I needed just about an extra 10 minutes, so I started the overlay this morning. So I have white with Aurora, which is like a light peach color, right now under this gather of clear. G. Brian has a set of canes we're gonna roll up on this. Catherine, can you bring over those pie calipers? So I have some calipers here. I'm gonna measure this and make sure it's the right diameter while G. Brian picks up the canes, heats those up. Thank you. So I pre-made a bunch of parts that are in a pickup box or in an oven that are right now they're sitting at 950 degrees. So I am going to make 1 cup with this pattern. Call it the wigwag pattern. This is a pattern that's widely used in the flameworking community, and I really like it, and I thought that I would try it on a large scale. So they flipped the canes once. I've got the right diameter over here. I set the calipers a little bit smaller because they're going to squeeze those canes together before I roll them up. That'll make sure that they're all fused together, and hopefully they meet on the other side. So I think they flipped it once. This time they'll probably make sure that they're fused together. I'm just kind of in a holding pattern here, heating up my clear glass. I want to make sure it's soft enough where they stick pretty well. So there's little pieces of metal that hold the canes together until they're tack fused called rarity. See Brian just flip those off. Just give me the nod. So he's going to take a quick little reheat, and I'm going to go over and roll these up. So we're going to roll them up over at that bench there. Amanda, is somebody up in the cage?
Jason.
I was just curious to see if they're adjusting the cameras. All right, so here goes the cane roll up. I just want to make sure there's no kiln wash on this. I'm going to take a quick little flash, make sure that they're all fused together. Now where they meet, I haven't touched them together all the way yet. So I'm going to do right here. Just give it one little roll, make sure that they're lined up perfectly. And now I'm going to start to heat them a little more and blow the bubble all the way through to the end. So I've done this 7 times for the pieces that are in the box. So there's a double cup, there's a single cup, and there's a quadruple cup. So this takes a little bit of time, probably about 25 minutes to get this pattern for the 1 single cup. Now I'm going to put a little puff of air into the end of the rod and marver the sides of it so it pushes that colored bubble all the way to the end.
George. Katie Hubb's mom is watching. She says hello.
Hey, good morning.
Chris and G, she said hello to everyone, so just so you know.
So the bubble's starting to get soft. I can see when I puff into it, it starts to blow up in the center. So I can see the clears all the way to the tip now. So now I'm going to get it really hot, marver it down into a smaller diameter, and then I'm going to pull and stretch it into a long tube. And that's when I'll start heating and twisting the pattern towards myself first and then away from myself with the next line directly up from there. When you're picking up canes like this, I think really the most important part is to make sure you don't trap any air bubbles in it when you roll them up. Actually, those canes are like pencils, so there's a groove in between each one. That's why I'm marvering in the center, pushing it down, pushing the air out the front and the back. Now it's starting to get nice and warm all the way through it. By making the diameter smaller, it also makes it thicker, which will make it easier to twist and then melt back together. Can you bring over the Dremel tool? Maybe I can do it over there.
It's right over here.
The one with the wide tip?
Yeah.
Hi, Heather.
Won't quite reach there, though. There you go. You want to bring it over there?
Yeah. It's just got one little stripe of kiln wash on one of the canes, and I can take this little Dremel tool and buzz that right off now. So I'll let it fall off center, and I flip it over, and I think that's pretty much it. Perfect, thank you.
Our tiniest fan is watching. One of our local glassmakers, Aaron Jack, and his wife, Sonia, just had a baby. Good friends of George, and baby Talia is watching from home. And Benjamin. Benjamin comes in all the time when we live stream.
So this is where I stretch the tube. And now I'm going to start to heat it and twist it. It's nice to do this while the tube is still hot, because I can just give it a little heat in a specific area, and that'll want to twist right up very easily. This saves a lot of time. As soon as I got that one done, I can go right above it and heat the next one and twist the opposite way.
Jason, when he reheats in the reheating oven, can you get a nice shot of the piece that he made yesterday that is like the piece that he's going to be making today here in the front? So
Now-
George has been working on this for a few weeks now. He had to pull all the cane and then make all the different cups to prep for this. So this is, he's already got hours and actually weeks of work already put into this beautiful piece.
So this part I think is really important to show people just so they can see how the patterning is all done. Once I have this all set, I'll make this into a cup, and that's how all of these pieces are put together, by making a single cup, joining it with another cup, and I have it all set where I've already made one cup that's got 4 of these put together, one cup that's got 2 of these sections put together, and then I got a single in there which I'm going to attach to this. And we'll talk about that when we get to that part. But this takes a little bit of time. In order to make something, this complicated, you really, especially if you only have 2 hours, you have to figure out, all the whole process ahead of time. I don't twist them really too much in the beginning because this is all going to get compressed. This long tube is going to get shrunk back into a nice thick cup. So when you do that, everything really gets exaggerated. Yeah, so Catherine just brought over this. This is what it's going to end up looking like.
He'll shrink this long tube down into this thick cup, and that's what he's going to join together.
So the end right here is pretty important. I want all of these cups to have a really nice termination point. So they all come together to a nice little tiny section. So I use the jacks to give that last little twist, squeeze it down, give it one more little heat so I can cut it right down to a tiny little section. Thanks, G.
So here's the piece he made yesterday. It has a lot of the pattern. You can see one of these sections is one of the cups that he's making right now. So just this one section is what he's making now. He's going to join 4 and then 4 on the bottom, so 8 altogether of these cups. And in the process of incalmo, this cup here already has 2 joined together, and he's made a cup out of the 2. So you can see it's got purple on one side and green on the other side. And then eventually they'll all come together to create this beautiful vessel. And this is going to be similar to the final product today. But you can see how that pattern stretches, and it's really beautiful zigzag lines or wigwag lines.
Can you hook up that air hose? Thanks, G. So this is the newest piece of equipment that we're using that's different. This is our auto inflator. We have a blow hose hooked up to the end of the blowpipe, and I can add a little bit of air. And I do this so the end of it, I can inflate and keep that bubble all the way to the tip. I'm going to use the torch to heat the back side here.
So George has done a lot of prep work because 2 hours, he needs more than 2 hours to make all these parts and all these pieces. And so he did want to show everyone how he got this wigwag design. And so he's going to only be making 1 cup. So in the pickup oven, he's got a cup that has 4 cups already put together, a single cup, single color cup, and then a double color cup. So he's going to add one of the single ones to this cup, make a cup out of that, add that double cup to the other double cup, and then add the quadruple cup to the other quadruple cup in there, giving us these 8 sections of color in the final piece. So in the whole 2 hours, he's got it all timed out. He's going to be able to do all of that, blow the vessel, and finish the piece. Yep. Who makes our tools? We have tools from many different tool makers. So we have tools from Italy, Carlo Dona. We have tools from Japan, the Maruko tools, or jacks, cutting edge shears, Jim Moore shears. We've got old tools from Steuben. Some of those were custom made. We've got wooden blocks. I'm not sure where we get our wooden blocks from. We get some tools and pipes from Spiral Arts. So we get tools from all over. Our auto inflator was designed by our technical staff, so we do have a technician. We have a couple that can create certain tools for us as well. For different tools, glassmakers prefer different tool makers. And so we have a wide variety of tools from different makers.
All right, G, pretty close. Yep. You're ready to pick up that single here in a second. I'll have Chris bring the punty. Yeah, you can bump it up to 1050 right now. Perfect. So as we're making this piece, the oven, the pickup oven that we're using to heat up the cups that I pre-made, 950 is a pretty good temperature to hold the cups at, where they're not going to get too hot and soft and stick to the shelf. But we have to remember to heat the oven up to 1050 or sometimes even 1100 in order to get them hot enough to pick them out of there and go into a reheating furnace that I'm using like right now. This one's set at 2100 degrees, so there's too much of a temperature difference there. The cup will crack and break when you go into the reheating furnace, so we always make sure we turn that up to at least 1050. And when that's up to temp, G. Brian's going to pick up that single cup. So it's another cup just like this with a different color on the inside. Now, as he's doing that, I'm going to finish this up. Chris is going to bring over a punty. And these canes are right on the surface. So what I do is I have Chris bring a little bit of extra clear that I stick on here so I can remove the clear by heating it and trimming it off, and that way it doesn't take any of the pattern. So we're going to flip this cup around so I can work on the top of it. Go ahead, Chris.
On a 3/4?
Got 3/4. A little bit of clear off the tip. So now this is all shrunk back, and you can see those lines really tightened up as I shrunk it back and made it shorter. So now I'm going to make sure this is going to come off. I'm going to start drizzling water right here on the jack line. This constriction is the jack line. This is where we want it to break free. that ready, G?
So George is a master glassmaker, has been working with glass for about 30 years. And so he's got lots of experience working, and he's going to make this whole process look very easy. And what you're seeing is not an easy process. This is actually a very difficult process, and lots of work has already gone into this, but he's going to make it look pretty easy because he's got years and years of experience. He's one of the senior members on our team. I think when people think of the Corning Museum of Glass, one of the names they think of is George Kennard, the glassmaker from the Corning Museum of Glass. And George is very well known. We were talking yesterday, he was practicing. One of his live streamed demos had how much? 3.2 million views, one of his videos. It was the giant dragon stem goblet.
Yeah, so the museum does a lot of different programming, and I think this fall they wanted something a little different, so every Wednesday they call this series Bringing the Heat. So they're going to have 4 gaffers that work here at the museum do a live stream, and then the next Wednesday or every other Wednesday we do what's called You Design It, We Make It. So kids can design something out of glass, they draw a picture, and we'll make it out of glass for them. So that's really fun too. All right, G. Brian's gonna pick up the next cup.
George put all these cups in here last night, I think, and brought them up to 900 degrees slowly overnight. So we're going to be picking up all these cups out of this pickup oven.
So when I break this cup off, the canes don't go all the way to the edge, so I tweeze it out, then I can cut back in so the canes are all the way right to the edge of the piece. Now Chris is going to help me push this back and thicken it up and try to make it the same size as the cup that G. Brian just picked up out of the oven. Hey Catherine, can you take one of these calipers when you get a chance to and just take a quick measurement on that?
You want me to use one of these, or I'm going to grab it.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yep. Push a little bit. That's the size right there, Catherine? Perfect. Where'd Amanda go?
She's right over here.
I want to see if my oldest daughter Chelsea's watching.
Okay, we'll find out.
She's supposed to be in class right now, but she's studying from home. Good.
Well, you taught her how to multitask, right?
I did. Well, I hope I did. Yep, looks like we're pretty good, G. You want to? This was right on the very edge, G, when you measured this? switch with you. Yeah, I think we're good.
So now they're going to join these two cups together. They want to make sure that the cups are just the right size. Amanda, George wants to know if his oldest daughter, Chelsea, is watching.
Oh, yeah, this is my sister-in-law.
What's the one tool you couldn't live without, George?
The one tool I couldn't live without had to be the blowpipe.
Gravity. Yeah, you can't blow glass without a blowpipe.
I'm almost there, G.
Or a furnace. Ooh, that's a good one.
There was a lamp worker named Kurt Wallstab, and he did this technique really, probably the best. And I really loved his work. I love his work, and yeah, so that kind of inspired me to try to do something similar. And flip. Turn.
So George likes to step outside the bench and add the cup.
One more time.
So he brings over the cup and he sticks it on from outside the bench.
When I put these two cups together too, there's no hole now, so the pressure can build up inside if you heat it too much. I try not to get the seam too hot, because now as we're in the reheating furnace, that pressure will start to build and it'll start to blow out where it's hot. All right, G, can I see that for a sec? I'm just gonna squeeze this together. You can see the seam is real hot. So just for a little insurance, I can squeeze it down, make sure they're lined right up, and they're not gonna start to blow out right there where that connection is. Perfect. So now, this is just a series of adding cups together. And once I have it shaped to a nice round ball shape, we're gonna do what's called reversing the axis. So I'm gonna pop a hole in the side of it where the seam is. We're gonna add a little collar and we're gonna flip it around so these cups are running on the opposite axis. So I have to kind of reshape the whole thing. I'm also going to get rid of that clear that's at the end of it.
When he punties these cups, he leaves a little clear behind because the color, those canes, that cane pattern is right on the surface of the glass. And so if the puntee were to remove a little bit of glass, it would remove a little bit of that, that line pattern. So he always leaves a little bit of clear on there and then just removes it now, and then he can see what is being pulled off. So if you look at these sort of areas where the lines come together, it goes right to the middle. And if he puntied right to that, it might remove a little bit of that color and the white would show through. But by leaving that little bit of clear, he's got that color that comes all the way to the middle. Now, George is one of our glassmakers who likes to work really large. He makes a lot of large pieces and works on a scale that might be difficult for most glassmakers, but he's got lots of practice doing it and he's very good at it. And we have a question from home. What is the biggest piece that you've ever worked on?
I think it would have to be the pumpkins They're out right now in the back of the truck. And also the snowman family. They're about the same size. Yep.
Yeah, so he's, for the museum, every year we put out a little glass display that's pretty seasonal. And right now on display here at the museum are the world's largest glass pumpkins. And so they're out in the shops or the courtyard entrance. And I believe each one of those pumpkins weighs a little over 75 pounds or so.
Actually, 85.
85 pounds, which is a very heavy piece of glass. They had special ovens. There's actually a video online. You can Google the world's largest glass pumpkin, and you'll see the team. See, were you on the team? See, Brian was on the team. Was Chris on the team? I know Tom Ryder, one of our glassmakers, was. Eric Meek. John Cowden.
So
Eli Smith.
This is the part here where I have to open it up now and make a hole. So I'm heating one specific area, and I'm going to use these tweezers to pick it open. So I push in and kind of spread it out. That's making it thinner. And once I have it thin enough, just by adding the torch, the pressure on the inside will usually pop it. It's close. Okay, G, whenever you're ready. So G. Brian's made up a collar on a blowpipe. So we're going to attach this to it. Perfect. Make sure it's closed up. I'm going to add a little bit of water to this little clear button, and we'll break that off. All right, G, I'll clean this up. Once Chris brings you the punty, you can grab the next one. So we're a half an hour, 32 minutes into it, and we've got the first 2 cups put together. We're gonna add these 2 cups to another set of cups in there. The next part, we're gonna reverse that. And then the last one is we're gonna stick it on to a section of 4 cups.
So by reversing these, each one of these sections of color, you can see where the lines kind of come together in a swirl, and the wigwag is kind of radiating out from the center. If he didn't reverse the axis on these cups, instead of that pattern, you'd see this pattern. So you'd see just a zigzag. So to get that sort of swirling into the center look, he's got to reverse the axis on those cups, making the tip of the cup the side of the cup. If that makes sense. When did you start making these pieces, George?
I think about 3 years ago for my class. So I usually teach a class at the studio of the Corning Museum of Glass in January, and I started, it's called an incalmo class. So I started making this pattern and doing it as a demo for the class. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, so here at the museum over at the studio, we teach classes, and usually in that class, there's either a technique or a style that is concentrated in the class. Sometimes it's just an all-around beginner class. But then when you get into the advanced classes and the intermediate classes, they'll focus on one technique because, advanced glassmaking there's so many different techniques, like this cane patterning, this incalmo patterning. And so George said it was one of his incalmo
Probably on a pipe would be great. Yep.
classes. This piece actually involves many advanced techniques, like the cane roll up and the cane patterning, but then also this incalmo, this switch axis incalmo. So this is a piece that will take lots of prep work. George has been working on the canes and the cups for weeks now. Every day in the morning, he'll come in and he'll pull some cane, make some cups. So he's going to condense this down into that nice little round sort of cup shape. We call it a cup, but it's not like a drinking cup or a tumbler. It's a sort of a grawl cup or a thicker cup that he can join together to make a bigger bubble.
All right, Chris. Yep. Whenever you're ready, G.
So we talked a little bit earlier. He's got a cup that is about the same size as this one that's got the double pattern on it already. So when he joins these two together, it's going to have those 4 sections of color, 2 on this one and 2 on the one that G. Brian's going to be picking up out of the pickup oven. We were looking at these pieces yesterday. George says he's got a little bit of purples and blues and pinks, even an aurora color. So this is going to be a really beautiful color palette. Right now everything looks orange. A nice cherry red, but this will brighten right up as it cools. So Chris is making the punty to flip the cup around that George has. G. Brian's making the punty to pull the cup that George already prepared in the oven out of the oven. And so to make a piece like this not only takes lots of years of experience, but also a nice big team.
That's what's really nice about working here at the museum is I work with all of these folks for many, many years, and they all have a lot of experience. I think everybody here on the floor has at least 20 years of experience. So in class, I would be doing what G. Brian is doing and give this piece to somebody to babysit just to keep warm. So it's nice to be able to have somebody go over, pick up the next one, and have it the right temperature to attach to this one when I'm finished. It saves a lot of time.
So there's the cup coming out of the oven.
Thanks, Chris.
And he's got to run over to the oven. They're going from a 1,000 degree oven to a 2,000 degree oven. So the quicker you get in that oven, the less likely that will crack and break. So George said, pull that oven right up close to we'll move the oven over to this side of the shop so it's closer to the the hole that G. Brian will be using instead of running across the whole studio.
I think one of the trickier parts too is pulling those cups out of the pickup box because they're heavy.
Yeah.
He's probably got about probably 6 pounds of glass, but he's got to pick it up with a punty that's going to hold on to it, but just at the right temperature so it doesn't get out of control when he's trying to go to the reheating furnace.
Yeah, so when you set out, there's certain pieces you could make with probably any glassmaker, but when you set out to make a piece like this, George knows he needs glassmakers who are used to working large pieces. So Chris and G. Brian are very good at hauling around large masses of glass, and so you kind of have to pick a team for the size work that you're making. So these guys have lots of experience lifting heavy pipes. There's certain ways you move around with more glass on the end of the pipe and ways you hold your body so you don't get injured.
When I start adding cups together like this too, I need to trim back to where the white is right to the edge of the lip. Get rid of anything that's going to make the piece not a good piece. We'll put this one a little bit together a little bit colder, okay, G?
So they took a caliper reading of the one G. Brian pulled out of the oven. So as George opens this cup up, he can measure that reading to make sure they're the same size. And because they're joining these two cups together in that incalmo process, the edges have to be really straight and flat so they come together really nicely. So that's what they're working on here. They're using that wooden board to push that lip back, leaving it nice and flat, nice and straight.
Before we started the demonstration this morning, I was looking at the cups that were in the box, and the one that G. Brian has on the end of the stick right now was a lot bigger. And I just knew that it would be harder to use a larger cup, so we picked that back up and we shrunk it down and compressed it. So it's thicker, it'll be more manageable once I stick it to this piece. Now these colors also react differently with the heat. So as I heat these up, one gets a little hotter faster than the other one. So this really helps that Chris is pushing it back and I'm papering it, and that's keeping everything nice and straight. That looks really good, Chris. Where's that caliper? This is the one. Close, G. Yep.
So they've got the caliper reading, but it's always nice to just hold the two together to make sure that they're really close.
So also, it's a little difficult sometimes to see which color is on which half. I want to put these two where the darker colors are on the opposite side. So whenever you're ready, G, I'll switch with you. Perfect. Yep. Okay, that's the red. And flip it. And flip. turn.
A beautiful stick.
Okay.
They got to remove one of the pipes now, so they add a little bit of cold water. A light tap, it pops right off.
Thanks, Chris. Do you folks in the audience have any questions? All right.
Yep, this is the 4 colors now. So each cup had 2 cups in it. It's pretty hard to tell because everything is hot and it looks orange, but you can kind of tell by the little bullseyes. So there's 2, there's 2. And all together there's 4. So this cup will either be the top half or the bottom half of the vessel. And he's got the other cup that has the 4 colors in the oven. They'll join the 2 together. One will be the top and one will be the bottom of the piece. So now they're going to do the same thing they did when they had the 2 cups together. Start to heat everything up, and then
Yeah.
he'll poke the hole and reverse the axis again.
Awesome.
So George was introduced to glass right out of high school. He answered an ad in the paper. He went to the job, and it was a glass shop. Not the kind of glass shop he thought it might be. I think that it was maybe a glass shop that installed windows or something. But it was a glass artist looking for some help. So it was a Leon Applebaum.
Yep, Leon Applebaum.
And
His
George
studio was
worked-
called Sahaj Glass Studio
And how long did you work there, George?
for 5 years.
5
Yep.
years. That's where he got his introduction to glass making. Yep. So we had a question from home. Is George planning on gathering over this? So he's going to take this cup, reverse the axis, join it to the other cup, and then once he gets both of those cups together, he's going to gather over it. I can't tell you how many times.
Hey, G, you want to make a collar?
Maybe once, maybe twice. It all depends. G said 4 times. That's a big piece. We're going to need some more help. I know the one he did yesterday, he gathered on once. They have to imagine, like, these cups are small, but they're super thick. So he already has quite a bit of glass in just one of these cups. What you gonna need? So these cups themselves weigh quite a few pounds.
No, I'll paper it back. I think this will be the last one where I'm going to pop the hole.
So he uses this newspaper pad that's folded up, soaked in water, to kind of push and condense this.
Thanks, Chris.
So again, he's using that hot torch just to heat one specific area, and you can see that it's getting hotter because it's starting to glow a little bit. When he takes the torch away, you can see it's glowing. Now the glass is really hot and soft there, and he's going to just take those tweezers and pinch it open. Chris is shielding his hand from the heat. This glass is very hot, throws off a lot of heat. It's a hot torch that's very similar to the torch they use for the flame working process. This one's just handheld. In flame working, you would have your torch fixed to the table, pointed away from you, and you would work with rods of glass in the flame. But in the hot shop, we like to use a handheld version of that, and we can heat certain spots really well. To be able to get the glass hot enough to be able to pick this hole, he'd have to go into that furnace. Meanwhile, everything else would get hot as well. And so it's nice to use this little hot torch too. To heat that one spot.
That's okay. Maybe a little bit narrower, G.
I just want to make sure these are going to fit together nicely. Is it? So these thicker pieces, you would have to change the annealing cycle. And there's a formula. You know, if you had a really thick piece of glass, there's a formula that you can calculate what your annealing cycle would be. But these pieces, they're about, you know, 1.5 inches thick. So it's probably a couple days. It's not too much. We're not talking, you know, when you're talking about thicker work, it's like the 100-pound paperweight that's solid glass in the museum's collection made by Josh Simpson weighs 107 pounds. And the annealing cycle for that one was about 3 to 4 months. And so 1 inch to 1.5 inches, it's not going to really be too much of a difference. And once he makes this vessel, it's actually going to blow out relatively thin, not real thin, but thinner. So we won't have to do a real special annealing cycle for this. We can do standard, you know, 2-day cycle or so. If it was solid, then that's when we'd have to start calculating the annealing cycle, and things would start to get trickier. More tricky when you're using solid work or combining blown work with solid work. That's when the annealing cycles become tricky or difficult to figure out. So this is them just removing that little bit of clear left behind from the puntee. So not only has George worked with glass for 30 years, but he's working here at the museum, being a gaffer here at the museum. He's worked with hundreds of different artists. We host a lot of different guest artists, and throughout the years, George has worked with so many of those artists. And what happens when you work with these different artists is you learn so much. And so as he works, he's probably picking up little tricks from all the different master glassmakers he's worked with over the years.
All right, only one more incalmo to go.
Nice. And I think when people come to the museum and they know George is on the team, they know they're in good hands because he's got so much experience and he's able to, work with a lot of glass and move around a lot of glass. And so I think there's a lot of people that come in and know that George is on the team and then feel really comfortable working in the shop and knowing that he's there to help them out.
I'll block this one up, Chris. Thank you.
So he's using that block to kind of condense this down into that nice little bullet shape. Right now it's a little oval from squeezing those together and making sure everything was nicely together. So now he's got to condense it again to get that nice little cup shape or bullet shape. No, George got his start at a glass shop. Was it Prattsburg?
In Prattsburg, New York, yeah.
Prattsburg, New York. A studio. I can't remember the name of the studio.
Sahaj Glass Studio.
Leon Applebaum was the glass artist, and George got a job there right out of high school and learned glassmaking there. Then where did you go from there, George?
I went down to Noslo Glass, which was owned by Louis Olson on Market Street. So that was my second production job. And the last production job that I had was at Vitrix Hot Glass Studio on Market Street also.
And then you came over to the museum?
Yep. Then I started teaching classes at the studio. I was actually the first artist in residence there. I think that was in 1997.
1997.
And then I started working at the Hot Glass Show soon after that.
Nice. I know I took my first glassmaking class from George back in 2000 or 2001.
I think Carl did too.
Carl was in the class, yeah. Yep.
Were you guys both in the same class?
I was in the class with Harry, that Harry taught with Carl, but I'm not sure. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I was very intimidated. It was Carl and all these older guys, and I was kind of in the mix, and I was very intimidated with my. Yeah, George teaches here at the studio and at Pilchuck, Haystack. Maybe not Haystack. What was it?
Penland?
Penland, yeah. But that's all kind of come to a pause for now, and so George this is like taking a mini workshop with George. He's kind of explaining what he's doing.
One more little heat.
You can ask him questions.
Just one more. Quick little heat, and we'll be ready to go. So is that big blowpipe up with the red tape on it?
Yep.
Is there another one with blue or white tape on it for the punty?
There is, yes.
All right.
So they're going to have to transfer this a few times onto another few blowpipes. So they've used a lot of punties so far and a couple blowpipes. But for the final piece, they have to make sure they have a big enough blowpipe for the amount of glass they're going to be gathering. And so
All right, Chris.
he's got a very large blowpipe
Yep.
and a second large blowpipe that they'll use for the punty as well.
Yeah. Chris, if you can give me a nice moil too.
Nice moil.
Yep, because I'm going to break it off of his pipe, and then I'm going to pick the end of it and make the collar on the front. So perfect.
So they've got that condensed down into that cup shape. Now it's time to flip it around and open it up. So Chris is going to start to work on that.
Can you turn that box up, G? Any questions from anybody at home? Amanda? That's perfect. Ready?
So it's not going to be much longer before they get this flipped around and opened up. So G. Brian's already working on the punty to pull the other cup that has the 4 colors already
So-
joined together in the oven out.
What's nice about this one is that we talked about it yesterday, and we're not going to reverse the axis on this because we're going to stack 4 on top of the other. If you think about it, I could have reversed the axis here, but you really end up with the same thing. So all right. I think we're actually a little bit ahead from yesterday, G. Brian. Think about maybe 5 or 6 minutes. Yeah. Perfect. One more trim. Blowing into a dirt hole. Yep. And
So we had
Wabuche.
a question from home. What was the most bizarre glass making technique you've ever seen? And he said they were out in Wabuche with a little glass program they do out in France. And George was out there and they blew glass into a dirt hole. And Chris said the most strange glass making technique that he's ever seen was when they encased a dead frog in glass. Yeah, pretty gross. I remember when our boss got the email of Chris telling him what they did that day. And Chris was like, never in my glass career would I think I would have encased a dead frog in hot glass. Yeah, I can't imagine.
I'm almost ready, G. I'm gonna just open this up just a little bit more.
So again, they're just making sure that those two lips are nice and flat. So that the two cups being put together go together really well in a nice seam. Bob Schweidergall is watching.
All right, Bob. Go ahead, push.
Bob is one of our glassmaking friends. He worked here at the museum. He did our ship program for many years, traveling around the world on a cruise ship, blowing glass at sea. And then he spent a few summers with us here at the museum as well. Is he blowing glass? Everyone on the floor said hi, Bob.
Yep.
Carl, G, Brian, Chris, George, and myself. You were here. Our old intern Benjamin Ewing tunes in for a lot of these live streams, so it's
Okay, G, how close are you?
always fun to
Yep, I'm ready.
chat with our old friends.
Yep, I'll take a quick flash.
Hi, Jeff. Jeff's watching from his desk in the offices. We'll be sure to let you know if we need a little extra help. He'll run out.
Who?
George Allen Eaton from Chicago?
Yeah.
From
Okay,
Chicago.
flip.
George does a lot of our, well, not only the teaching that he does in many of the glass
Turn.
shops, the glass studios and glass schools,
Turn.
but George has worked here at the museum
Yep.
for, what do you say, 15 years. And he does a lot of our
Yep.
outreach that we do, whether it's the hot glass, the mobile hot glass show or the road show,
Do a light beat. Well,
the glass barge, the cruise ships. And so for a while, he is one of the kind of the supervising glassmakers that kind of travels with the road show. If the road show goes somewhere, George usually goes along. So he's, been to Florida, Chicago. Did you go to Australia when they
I
went?
didn't get to go to Australia.
Didn't get to go to Australia.
I did get some kangaroo jerky though.
Oh, they brought you back some
boss brought
kangaroo jerky. That was nice of them.
One more time, G.
Yeah, the Glass Art Society conference was out in
bit more,
Adelaide,
In the
Australia.
middle, just overall, and then I'm gonna heat
And they
the
shipped
top front.
the road show over. And since then, that was so difficult that they bought a few shipping containers. And so they were, George and Chris were just talking about the program that we do at Babouche, and instead of they send a shipping container with the whole shop in over for that. So any outreach that we do now that has to be shipped overseas, we don't send a road show, we send a shipping container hot shop. Yeah. We just got a fancy new road show. They retired the original road show, and so a few years ago, now we're working on this fancy brand new truck. When it's safe to travel again, you might see the road show traveling down the mobile hot shop, traveling down the highway to one of our outreach programs. George might not be too far behind it.
Okay. For the good heat, a little more on the front, and I'll pop the hole.
So this is all the cups. This is the last of the cups, right?
Yep.
So we've got all the pattern work now in this egg-shaped bubble. So now it's just going to be, they've got to pop a hole in it to get a blowpipe on there.
Hey, Chris, maybe you can take it after G drops it off. And G, can you make up the collar? And remember, we're gonna make it a little differently today.
See how it has that crease line? They've got to get that nice and hot and melt away that crease line because George is going to gather more clear glass over top of this. And if that crease line is still there, they'll trap a ring or a bubble. So they want to make sure he wants to make sure this is nice and smooth
Can you give me a bit more on the front, G?
before he gathers over it.
try that. Perfect. Okay, you want to come back me up, Chris? Thanks, Carl.
So he's going to pop one more hole in this. G. Brian's working on the collar, which is a little bit of glass on the end of a blow. So he's gathering that little bit of glass on the end of the blowpipe, and what he'll do is he'll let the glass kind of fall back to the edge or the head of the blowpipe, and then he'll pop a little bubble through the thin glass. And so it'll be a blowpipe with a big mass of glass that will act as the collar that will hold the piece.
Let's take a quick reheat, Chris. I'm going to go on the outside. That's good, Chris. Close. You start to see the white. Turn. Quick heat. How's it looking, G?
There you go. Got a nice hole there.
Yep. Yep. Perfect. Can you just
See all
paddle the
that
front a little bit just to make
beautiful
sure it's nice and
pattern from that camera inside the reheating oven.
flat? A little bit, not much. We're close.
I like how all the cups come together. It creates that sort of
All right, let's try
feathered
that.
look.
Whenever you're ready, G.
So we stick
Turn.
that collar right against the piece, right in the hole. Just going to make sure it's really sealed on there.
Yep, that's okay. No, that's good. Yeah, no, this is going to be good. You ready?
I'll remove it from the punty. And the piece has been flipped around for the second to last time.
That's it.
You got a punty it. Hey.
You're right.
Should call this the flip-flop wig-wag. He's had to flip this thing around so many times.
So G, this time I'm going to squeeze down on that oil to clear, and then we're going to take the button off, and then we're going to get hot. So as soon as you think I can squeeze it a little bit. While I'm squeezing this, Chris, can you torch the bottom clear with the hot torch?
So he's got to remove
No,
that little bit of
button
clear
at
off the end. And that will become the bottom of the vessel.
Okay, G.
So they'll clean this up, make sure everything's nice and smoothed out. Gather over it, start to blow the vessel, and then they'll flip it around. So what's on the blowpipe now will become the top of the piece. And the area they're torching, that's going to become the bottom of the vessel. So he's using this newspaper pad. Carl is shielding his arm from the heat. Your arm is very close to that hot glass. And as this piece becomes larger and as they add more glass to it, you're going to see a lot more of that shielding happening because it will throw off quite a bit of heat.
Hold on a sec, G.
It's going to preheat that seam. Like I said, we don't want to, he doesn't want to trap any air when he gathers over it. And so he's going to preheat this before he goes back into the glory hole so they can really melt out that seam. And yesterday, G.
We
Brian
didn't
got
need to
the
do this yesterday,
perfect
Chris, but
heat
as I'm blocking it,
to
can you
melt
take the
away
torch
the
and hit the
seam.
top seam?
They did a trial run yesterday because the last time George made one of these pieces, he said, was last January in one of your classes.
Yeah.
And so he hasn't made a piece this scale or with this complexity in quite a while. So they did a trial run yesterday to make sure it went well, and it went really well. And we have the piece sitting out here in the front so you can see as well. This piece probably weighs right now, I haven't touched it, so I have a good idea because I can feel the weight of the cups, but G. Brian or George, what would you say this piece weighs right now?
I'd say 15 pounds.
15 pounds, really?
What would you say, G?
Geez, that's more. The pipe itself weighs about 8 pounds.
Yeah, let's try that, G. It's okay for a second, Chris?
Maybe 15 to 20 pounds, but that's going to feel a lot heavier because it's moving around and you're holding that weight away from your center of gravity. It's going to get a lot heavier pretty soon because they're going to add more clear glass over top of it, and because they have such a massive surface area, it's going to pick up a lot of clear glass, and so it's going to become a lot heavier here pretty quick. Yeah, I probably, every time anyone sees George make anything, they always want to know how heavy it is. I can tell you it's always really heavy.
It's pretty smooth.
It's never real light.
We don't have much time. Let's do it one more time, just real quick. Yep. I'll paper it this time right there on that seam.
I can tell you if you're turning the pipe and carrying it around, it feels like 1,000 pounds. So saying it's you have to add on that extra 3 or 4 feet that you hold it away from your body. That adds a few pounds. And then while keeping it turning, you'll notice as he lifts it back to the bench, he's got to keep it turning. Otherwise, it'll fall off center, especially because he's getting it so hot.
All right, let's try that, Kate.
So a lot of the times you'll hear George say, work smarter, not harder, and so that he'll really utilize the team. And because he does work large, he has all these, he knows all the tricks and everything to keep himself safe and from being injured, but it does happen. So Chris is just blowing the smoke out of George's face. When you have a nice big team like this, you got extra hands.
It's real smooth. It's real smooth.
They can spoil George. Carl's keeping his hands nice and cool. Chris is blowing the smoke out of his face. G. Brian's lifting the weight.
One strip or two?
Just one.
A lot of glass.
So it looks like now they're getting ready to gather over it. So he's going to cool this
Yeah, we don't need to
bubble
make it any bigger
off.
than that over there.
Blowing on it with that compressed air a little bit. And they're going to gather over it.
Pretty crazy, huh?
We haven't done much gathering because he's been using cups that he previously made. So they did a few gathers, but this will be the first big gather. Can we play that gather animation? For those of you who aren't familiar with this term gathering, there's our furnace, and it holds about 1,000 pounds. This is a nice big furnace. George can make lots of big work out of this big furnace, and it's a pool of hot glass inside there. It sits in a big ceramic crucible. He goes in and kind of dips it out like honey out of a bowl. Very hot honey. It's a lot heavier than honey too, isn't it? So they're cooling off the pipe. They're going to throw this into the furnace. Yeah, it's pretty heavy. I can tell they're lugging it around.
All right.
So G cooled the pipe for George. George is going to take this gather.
So all this work, this is what it comes down to, is one gather and make the final form. So the one thing about putting all these cups together is that there's a really big bubble inside this now. So I want to make sure that I gather over it at the right temperature. If it's too hot when I go in to gather, all of that glass that I'm going to gather out of there will heat that core bubble up, and it'll get really out of control and hard to manage. So I like to let it cool down enough where I can support the gather to come out, cool the pipe at the pipe cooler, and come over here, and by the time I get back to the bench, it's just starting to heat up on the inside. So I think that's the easiest way to do it if you can time it to get to that point.
Yeah, everything's happened pretty slow up until now. Now the pace is going to really pick up. More of the team's going to start to jump in.
So we got a half an hour to finish this up before the channel shuts off.
There he goes. It goes in, turns in one direction, kind of comes level. The glass drips off. Now watch when he comes out. He usually strips a little bit of it off. You can really see how this glass moves like honey. The pot of water is boiling. The bucket is glowing, and there is our nice, big, beautiful gather. That pattern is magnified. The lens of thick, clear glass makes it look like that pattern is magnified. Amanda's gonna get a nice detail shot. Check our social media pages for pictures of this piece soon. Once it comes out of the oven, we'll take pictures, and if it comes out the way George hopes, I believe this piece will be for sale. Yeah. We don't sell any pieces we usually make here at the museum, but for this Bring the Heat demonstration, we're going to be selling these few pieces made by our artists.
I can feel it starting to get a little soft on the inside, which is perfect. I'm going to come over and cool the tip. Can you paddle the bottom just a little bit, Chris?
So that bubble in there,
Yep,
he cooled it off to gather on it, but like you said, it's starting to heat up.
that's good.
And that's what they want. They want this all to become really hot and gooey and soft again. The tip of that bubble will become the bottom of the vessel.
Get the jack.
So they are cooling it so that it doesn't become too thin. So by cooling it, as he inflates it or blows it up, they'll be able to keep that thickness at the bottom, which will make this very stable
Should we turn the pressure up?
at the bottom. So we've got these two valves on the back of the bench here, and that controls our auto inflator. And so we can dial it right down to a little bit of pressure. He can turn it up. So it's very much like if you were to blow through the end of the pipe yourself.
I'll
You
get
can
the jack line
control
started, and then we'll.
how much air comes
Let's do that, G. Yep.
out of the
I want to taper the bottom. We're going to torch the top a little
hose.
bit to get the jack line started. Yeah. Yeah. I want to just make sure that this is nice and smooth too here at the bottom.
So he papers with the newspaper, papers the tip. Now usually you'd hear him say blow. Blow soft, blow hard. But because he's using that auto inflator with a blow hose hooked up to the end of the pipe, all he's going to do is step on a foot pedal. So you have to watch to see that the glass is
Let her hang a little
inflating.
bit. Should we take a quick heat? Yeah.
But before this, you'd hear him say blow. Somebody would be blowing through the end of the pipe. But we're going to keep our masks on. We're going to not put our mouth on the end of the pipe for now, just to keep everybody safe.
We'll start with the light one, G. Catherine, can you get ready with the hose
Yep.
if we need it on the end?
So I'm gonna,
All right, let's try that,
Brian's
G.
heating it up. Chris is ready to shield and paddle. And I gotta cut in that jack line.
And back.
They're also using gravity.
And
So they're
back.
holding it at that 45-degree angle, which will stretch and elongate the shape.
Yep, plug it in. And back. All right, you ready?
So he's stepping on that paddle. You're gonna start to see the bubble get a little bit bigger. Now we can do two things. We can kind of tap on it, or you can hold it down, depending on how much pressure.
That was perfect, G. And back. Okay, let's take a heat, stretch it, blow it up. Awesome.
All right, he said get a little more heat on there, and let's blow it up.
No, yeah, it's pretty warm all the way through, G, so a little less. Yep, we're good.
They know how hot the glass is by the way it starts to move.
Yep, let her stretch.
And so by watching it kind of,
Back.
as they switch directions, it'll start to kind of move back and forth.
Okay,
They
level.
can also tell by the color when it's really glowing. We know it's nice and hot. If we were to start to see pinks and purples and blues, we'd know that the glass is getting cold or chilly.
You good with one more?
A little more heat. We're gonna puff this up all the way. This is really beautiful.
There might be too many to count, but what colors did George use for the canes?
The canes, he
Girl.
used black, white,
And purple.
purple,
All Duro.
all Duro. So the canes, he used a special type of glass called Duro. And when the glass is, you can stretch it quite a ways and it'll keep that line shape. If you use just regular glass color, sometimes it can kind of bleed out or blur a little bit. But that Duro is really good for people who like to use this cane technique because those lines stay really clean and crisp. Yeah, so I think he's got like, in each cup, he's got alternating white, black, and a purple cane. For those of you here at the museum, you're welcome to come down and check out the cups and the piece that he made yesterday. Get a little closer look and you can see the canes. So he's squeezing down that neckline. Now we can start to see some of those blues and purples and pinks. I think that green color is a turquoise.
And that
Might be a green color, I'm not sure.
All right. Punch it up.
There's the piece that he made yesterday. So now George is going, it looks like they've got the shape. Remove it. Okay. They've got the shape. They're gonna transfer this off of the blowpipe onto the punty. So this will be the last transfer. You can really start to see those beautiful colors and patterns. All the weeks of work that George put into these cups and pieces. It's all coming together now. Look at that, that's a really nice shot. I would say that when George makes these pieces, everyone is like, how did you get those patterns like that? Because I think a glassmaker could look at this and say, I see how you did that, but I think they're curious how he got the patterns to come to the swirl like that. And it was all that flipping around that he did, all the reversing of the axis that he did. I know the first time I saw one, and I was like, had to look at it for a while and say, how the heck did he make that? You know you've come up with a neat design when glassmakers look at something and say, how was that made?
Okay, one more quick flash.
All right, so George has the punty ready. Said one more quick flash. You'll hear a lot of communication between the team. Everything has to be done at the right time, the right temperature. And of course, teamwork is really important. All right, so George is going to stick the punty on from outside the bench.
And flip.
Stick it right on there.
Turn.
He'll use
Back.
the strap of the jacks to kind of cool and straighten up. Yep.
Back. Nice and easy, Chris. Turn nice and easy.
So now they're just going to let that punty kind of settle up. They don't want to break this off too hot because it'll flop around on the punty. G. Brian's heating
Ahead,
the neckline
ahead.
because they're going to cool
Or
the constriction
right there.
line
That's good.
in order
G.
to break it free. So we don't want it to be too cold. He's going to add some water right along that neckline.
You take the pipe, Chris. Can you put the jacks on the jack line?
Yep.
KG.
With a light tap.
Yep.
It pops right off. How about a big round of applause for a nice clean break? Yeah. And there is our piece flipped around.
Nope.
And a little hole
Thanks, Carl.
at the top. So we're just kind of coming up on the final stretch. Got about a little less than 15 minutes left, which is a perfect amount of time to finish off the top of this
I
vessel.
got it. Thanks. I'll bring it back and I'm going to look at the front. We might torch it a little bit. I need to tweeze it down. Squeeze
That's
it
a
way
nice
down.
shot.
I wish I would have left a little bit longer of a neck, but it's okay. I think we can get it.
If he wasn't working under the live stream, I think is going to cut out right at noon.
Nope.
But if he wasn't working
Thanks,
on
Carl. I
a
just
time
wanted to be able to see
constraint,
it.
he could work on this, as long as he liked and get everything just the way he wants. But I think he's going to try to finish it up in the live stream time. But there's not much. He's going to leave it pretty closed off. He's probably just going to clean
Chris,
up the
can you
top.
pull that bench away and the torch back a little bit? I want to work from the outside of the bench.
So he's going to work outside the bench, so he's having Chris kind of pull everything back so he has a lot of room to get in there and work from the outside of the bench.
Where's those flat tweezers?
So he's going to pull the lip. So he just pulls the edge with the tweezers, pulling it thin, pulling it straight.
I'm going to squeeze it down with the jacks.
Now that he's got it pulled out, he's going to take the jacks and kind of squeeze it down and pull it a little longer.
You want these big gem wars or you want a different pair?
Those are okay.
see that nice orange glow at the top.
Nice and slow.
It's nice and soft there. Just gonna tweeze the lip.
Faster. Back.
So you can see G. Brian's turning the pipe.
Back. Yep, that's perfect, Chris.
George is using the jacks to kind of cut that down, so you're going to hear, because he is the gaffer, he's the person in charge, you're going to hear him kind of instructing. He's still, even though he's not turning the pipe, he is in very much control of what's
Can I have
happening.
the camera on the inside?
He can even control the AV booth.
Thank you, Jason.
The person in charge. So even Jason up in the booth is listening to George.
Paddle. Front. Back.
Everybody's trying to make it so this goes really smooth.
Back. Back. Just hold it right there, G. Okay, quick flash. Give it. I need to put the jack line where I just torched it. Just hold that paddle on the front like you said, or like you did before. Thank you.
This is kind of fun because we don't usually have the gaffer mic'd up. So you can hear some of the subtle
Okay, G.
conversation they have. So as he's kind of explaining
Paddle.
to Chris what
Back.
needs to happen.
Perfect.
Now he's got this compressed air and this wooden cone. They're going to puff up the top. So this is kind of like if you were going to use a soffietta. So it's a wooden nozzle on the end of that compressed air. They put the wooden nozzle into the hole and he can puff up the top or the shoulders. And I think he's going for that nice rounded look at the top, so he can use this hot torch to preheat the top. That way, when he puffs it into the vessel, those shoulders will round out nicely. It's looking good, George.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that little neck there if I can.
Okay. So he wants to try and leave that little neck there. That little flowery
G.
part that he used to pinch and pull the lip, that part will come off. But not until he's got the whole thing kind of puffed up the way he wants. Cools the neck, heats the shoulders, and then watch this
You like? Oh, I got it.
puff right up. A little more heat. You can tell when you blow into it, if it's not puffing up as much as you want, it's probably not as hot as he needs it yet. So that's why he stopped puffing it and went right for that torch. We don't really have any time to waste. This glass heats up very quickly, but it cools down just as quick. And so at this stage in the game, because the glass is a little thinner, we don't have as much time as when it was thicker to work on it out here in the room temperature air. So you can see he goes from one tool to the other pretty quickly. Once they come out, they'll start working on it right away. Here we go. Puffing it up some more. This shape really makes this color pattern and design really pop. George's work is usually very colorful with lots of patterning work.
I got lots of good advice though from all the team. Usually my colors are bright orange, bright yellow, bright red.
George likes the color palette of red, orange, yellow. And so he pulled Chris in for some color advice.
One more time, G.
Yeah, so this is going to go into the oven pretty soon. But Amanda's going to come back in a couple days when this comes out of the oven, take a few pictures, few still shots, and then she'll post those on our social media site, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And then if it comes out and George is happy with it, it's going to go right to the shops. You can purchase it if you would love to take this beautiful piece home, which I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would, because this is really beautiful.
Boy, we're really close.
I always think it's fun too if you watch something being made
I want to knock that top off here.
and it's something that you can take home, because it's like not only did you see it being made, but you have a nice story to go with it.
I'm good, Chris.
And I believe the videos from this series, Bringing the Heat,
G.
all those videos will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So this will be a video that
Flip. Right there,
you
stop.
can watch or tell your friends
Flash.
about, and it'll be on YouTube for as
Carl,
long
can you
as
open the
site's
doors all the
and
way up when
running.
he goes in and out? Yeah.
And then when
Perfect.
you go back to YouTube to find this video, you're going to find videos that George has done throughout the years. So he's participated in a few other videos.
Okay,
One
G.
went viral. One he's got 3.2 million views or watches. I think that was the 2300 where he made the really large
Hold on, G. I'm going to just trim that
dragon
real
stem
quick.
goblet.
And back
He's
real
going to
slowly.
trim a little bit off, just a
Turn.
little tiny bit.
Turn.
All about the
Turn.
details here.
Turn. And perfect.
Nice. We'll fire polish that cut edge away.
Hold on 1 second.
Flatten it out.
Okay, flash. Yeah, please. Thank you.
A quick flash, and Chris Rochelle's going to put on a silver suit, maybe just a sweatshirt. And he's going to put this away into our slow cooling annealing oven. This is the saddest part of the demo because we don't get to see it for too long. We have to wait a few days. Keeping it warm. In order to get this off that punty, they do have to create a little thermal shock. And so he's applying a little heat with that hand torch to the area that they're going to shock it so that it doesn't shock it too much. Adding water to a hot piece of glass like this could be detrimental unless the heat in the glass is just right. Yeah. Chris has the Kevlar gloves on and the silver jacket and of course a face shield. As he's going to be carrying this piece into the 910 degree
Move it
oven.
a little bit.
A little bit.
All right,
So a
we'll do it
little
this time.
personal protective equipment is required.
Yeah, we'll do it this time. Can you hold the
Jack?
jacks
Shears?
on the, yeah,
Jacks or shears?
the shears? Thanks, Catherine. Yep.
Fire polish?
We'll hit the bottom with the torch. Can you hold the, yep, perfect. Are you ready, Chris? And stop. Flip.
So we'll add
Get ready for the
water
end of it.
to that connection.
Flip. Right there. Okay, pick it up, Chris.
A light tap, it pops right off. They're going to fire polish the sharp edge away. Yep. And into our slow cooling oven. Cool slowly. Overnight. That's George Kennard, everyone.
Right.
A beautiful piece.
Well, I'd like to thank you guys for sticking around and watching, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it.